All right, good evening, and we will open the December special meeting of the Park and Recreation Commission. Susan, would you do roll call, please?
Yes. Randy Curtis.
Here.
Katie Dane.
Sorry, here.
Jason Irving. Jason Irving.
Here, is my mic not working?
Now it is.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Lorenz.
Here.
Cassie Marshall. Melissa Smith. Shannon Roberts.
I'm here.
Cassie Marshall.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, our first item is to take any public comments from any citizens that would like to address the commission. Remind you, please give your name and address, and you have up to 3 minutes to make your presentation. So Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
It looks like David Dewey joined us. He's in as an attendee though, and he doesn't have his hand raised though, so.
All right. So no testimony, comments from the public. All right. With that, the first item of business would be to approve the September 23rd minutes of the Parks Commission. I would be looking for a motion and a second on that, or any comments if you have them.
I would move to approve them as presented, and nice job, Susan. There was a lot of content in those minutes, so thank you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? If not, please signify by raising your hand, saying aye for approval of the minutes.
Aye.
Looks like we have approval. Great, thank you. First meeting item is related to the annual retreat. Normally at this meeting, the commission would set a date, usually in late January. It would be a special meeting in addition to the regular commission meeting, and it would be an annual retreat where we review our work for the previous year and set goals for the coming year. 2020 has been kind of a lost year for us. I put this on because I wanted some discussion as to whether we would hold a retreat, or perhaps, because we do not have a parks director in place right now, at a minimum, maybe we delay and set a meeting like that sometime later next year, when at least we have a parks director, and and have some opportunities to talk more about what's happening for the year. So it's just up for discussion. I would welcome any comments or feedback from the commission.
I know this is later in the agenda here. Is there any idea on general timeline on getting the new parks director on board?
Yeah, I can hop in probably. So it should be pretty early next year. So I just give a brief update right now. We're going through the process of narrowing the application pool down and going through the interview process. And so hopefully early next year, we'll have a parks director on board. And if things go well, that would be, January, February timeframe at the latest.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I agree, Randy. I think it would be good to wait, maybe to get the parks director on board.
Okay.
I agree too.
Great.
As I said, this has been an unusual year. Many of us refer to 2020 as kind of a lost year. We've only met a few times. Never did present the annual report from 2019 to the council that was originally scheduled in April. And by then, these meetings were being canceled. just a heads up, I would like to put on the January regular agenda the annual report. We will need to do some amendments to it. We can talk more about it at that time, but just give everybody a heads up that between now and the next meeting, you might want to pull that out, kind of look it over. Much of the report will probably stay in its current form. We may just add an extra year and call it the 19-20-21 report. We'll see what the titles would be, but anyway, that will be an item for discussion at our regular January meeting. And then we'll get an update as well, probably from Steve about director and programs, and kind of look forward and talk more about the retreat at that time. So any other comments before we move to the next item? Very good. Steve, I think you're up now on the budget summary. Just make some quick remarks. We would have reviewed the budget at our October meeting. It was scheduled on that agenda before the meeting was canceled. So we've had no input into it. The council has basically finalized the budget, but I did want Steve to give us an overall review of what was in the budget, and particularly focus on any changes that occurred between last year and where we're headed into 2021. So Steve, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. So yeah, just to confirm, so actually the budget was adopted at the last council meeting Monday night officially. So I think generally speaking, though, when Kathy and I attended a meeting, I think it was probably in the October timeframe. I think it was the October meeting. We talked a little bit about the budget then. Not much has changed overall, really, from the discussion we had with you at that meeting. So just from a high level perspective, if you remember, Kathy gave a little presentation on how the budget was put together relative to COVID and the different phases that we might be in and how that relates to where we're at now. So I think the best way to state it, I think, is that the budget really is going to follow the phases of COVID, if you will. So if we remain status quo in what I think still officially in phase 2, if I remember correctly on the COVID framework, if that continues, and it looks like it will for the time being, into 2021, essentially the budget and the way we utilize the budget will be the same. So in phase 2, we're still minimizing expenses to the extent that we can. We'll, still look at vacancies and new hires, and if those are if any do go through, there will be, kind of exceptions to the rules, so to speak, and there'll be discussions with mayor and city administrator on that to make sure that the expenses are needed from that standpoint. So I just wanted to start there, maybe at a high level, and see if there were any questions on how the budget was put together. And then we can dive into just a couple of the details and talk about changes from in 2020 to 2021 and 2022. So I'll pause really quick. Any generic questions on the overall framework?
Not hearing any yet at the moment, Steve. If anybody, as Steve is talking through this process, if you do have a question, like many of you, I'm seeing you on the side of my screen now in smaller pictures, just kind of wave your hand. You can get my attention, and then we'll let you ask any questions as we move along here. So go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Randy. So up on the screen right now that I'm sharing is what Kathy and I, would refer to as a roll-up budget, if you will. So it doesn't necessarily have line item by line item detail, but it does show you the high-level budget summary. And we gave all the past years as well, so you can kind of see the differences from 2015 all the way through to 2020. And then there's a projected budget to end the year in 2020. And then you'll see on the right side, the two columns, there's 2021 and 2022. There's also a notes column, and I'll touch on that as we go to the next couple of screens. But generally speaking, the expenses for 21 and 22 are in line with what we had adopted for 2020, and very similar actually to 2019 for that matter as well. So very few changes. There's some inflationary numbers or inflationary increases when we look at salaries and benefits and those types of things. But as far as the day-to-day expenses, they look and will act very similar in 21 and 22 as they did in 19 and 20. So this first screen in the Parks and Rec side of the budget, the big difference here that you might see is under the administration. And I just highlighted, I think, the correct number in 2021. Big jump there in that number from what's in 2020. And the reason for that one is the PROS plan that we'll talk about a little bit later. And I can give you an update on that, but that's the expense for the PROS plan that's showing up in that line item. And then other than that, as you scan the page, it's again, it's very, very similar to the past couple of years. And then as you scroll through on the primarily on the park maintenance side of things, you'll see the one change there is the addition of a maintenance personnel to help increase the levels of service on the maintenance side. And then down below in the repair and maintenance of play equipment and the equipment and vehicles, those are some of the capital improvement projects and capital purchases that we'll talk about here on the capital piece of the budget. So that is operations and maintenance in a nutshell. So really just a couple of changes, the Parks Rec open space plan, and then the addition of the maintenance worker. Those are the two big changes here. So I'll pause there. Any questions before we hit capital?
Hey, Steve, I have a quick question. So I know it's COVID dependent, but are we budgeted for seasonal hires this summer if we're up to phase 3 or whatever by then?
Yes, so the 19 and 20 budget, and then likewise the 21 and 22 budget includes room for seasonals, but that would be one of those things that wouldn't be approved, if you will, unless we hit phase 3 and things start to open up. And then phase 4, as we hit phase 4, we'll start looking at some of the backlog and some of those additional hires as well. So great question.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, this is Dave Dewey. I just joined. Sorry to join kind of goofy there. I had a question on the budget there. It looks like there's $400,000 of projected savings from the 2020 budget to the 2020 projected. And so I'm wondering, do those funds just roll into the 2021 budget, or is there a plan for those funds, or how's that work?
So parks in general is part of the general fund. And so any money that's not used from 2020 essentially rolls back into the general fund as a whole, and then gets redistributed, if you will, in 21 and 22. Or if, as a whole for the general fund, which includes police, fire, administration, finance, all of those are general fund activities. So if there's leftover money, so to speak, at the end of the year, or revenues are higher than expenses at the end of the year, that's another way to look at it, then that essentially just builds up the general fund reserves, if you will.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that.
Steve, a couple of questions. First, I'm not seeing a breakout in the budget for the cemetery. Is it buried in this budget? I was thinking there was a separate line item for cemetery.
Great question. I will say that is probably an oversight on both Kathy and I's part. Cemetery should have been included here. It's not in the Parks and Rec category, if you will. Cemetery has its own fund even within our budget framework. And so I will send commission members the cemetery budget and let you see that separately. And again, it's going to look very similar to 2020. In fact, even more similar probably than what you're seeing here on the park side.
Well, obviously, the reason I brought it up, as you know, we have had a citizen that has called and testified and emailed for several months about the upkeep of the cemetery. And I think staff has done a reasonable job of explaining the challenges that occurred in 2020, including the lack of seasonal help. But I want to make sure that as we move back to whatever is the new normal by hopefully next spring or summer, have a good understanding as to the level of maintenance and work that we could expect to be done at the cemetery. So when that budget comes back, certainly sometime in the next couple of months, we want to maybe review that and get everybody's perspective about how we deal with the cemetery.
Yeah, great comment. I apologize, really should have had that in here. So, and we can cover it at the January meeting as well, but there is additional funds in 2021 and 2022 at the cemetery that would help with some of those comments and concerns that we've been getting from citizens, primarily around weed management, if you will, and then also I believe there was some additional funds in there that would allow for some additional maintenance that'll help up there. So we can cover that in more detail in January, but we do have a few more dollars associated for the cemetery for 2021.
Okay, great. Other questions from commission?
Hi, Steve. This is Shannon.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Did we got a new contractor for the cemetery, correct?
No, so maybe I don't know exactly what you're getting at, but we still have the same cemetery maintenance personnel up there.
I thought we changed contracts with another vendor for the care and maintenance. Am I thinking of something else?
Yeah, potentially. So that's still the operations and maintenance of the cemetery is still completed by the city, and we have a cemetery maintenance worker that's up there, and so that's going to continue into the future.
Okay. Alrighty. And as a side note, the VFW has already laid the holiday wreaths on all the graves, the 500 and some graves. So many of them were really overgrown. So maybe like after the first of the year, when things get sorted, we can kind of look at that.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the overall budget discussion as well, where we'll have a few more opportunities in the budget to increase the levels of service. And then I think the big one that's in there, and assuming we move forward with it, is the seasonal aspect, which we did not have this year. So both seasonals and volunteers were the big the big difference makers, I think, between prior years and this year.
I understand. Thank you.
I have just one more question real quick. I'm noticing for the trail maintenance, there's a line item, but it doesn't look like we've had budget the last few years. Cassie had made a comment, I think last meeting, about maybe focusing some dollars towards walking opportunities, particularly due to COVID, maybe an increased need during COVID. Can you talk a little bit about park maintenance or trail maintenance? Is there not a need there, or is that budgeted somewhere else? Or
yeah, trail maintenance is actually wrapped up into the general park maintenance categories. So we use the same dollars that you see under general parks maintenance to take care of the trails and the open space, for that matter.
Okay, thank you.
So Steve, you and I shared an email here a little bit earlier today. This will carry over in a minute to your presentation on the project's capital budget, but let me frame it. It's an issue that I raised, I think, at September meeting when Kathy was talking with us. About 4 years ago, Kathy presented to the City Council a report at their planning workshop that the parks program was in 3 to 4 years was going to hit a point where we could not sustain the operation, maintenance, and improvements to our parks lands. And as a result of that presentation, the council asked us to study the possibility of a metropolitan park district. That work had gone on for quite a while until the spring of 2018. and it just was, I guess, suspended. But my question is this. The data that we had at that time showed that we were going to have trouble funding the ongoing maintenance and development of our parks. The budget before us today would not indicate that that is a problem, at least not as severe as what I remember a few years ago. So I guess my comment is that I would like to see the commission receive an update to her original report. And perhaps this is a topic that might serve well to go on the city council's planning agenda, planning workshop that they will hold this January. If the council isn't as interested in that, it certainly is something that I think Parks would appreciate and that I would appreciate seeing. So that was the context of my email earlier, Steve. Not expecting you to address it all tonight, but it drove critical decision-making and work that this commission did for several years. And I think it's worthy of an update to figure out, are we headed to that? Was it just delayed? Or in fact, is it no longer a significant problem? So feel free to comment it, and any comments the commission members have on it, that would be fine as well.
Yeah, it's a great comment overall. And I think part of that presentation was, Kathy often referred to it, I think, as the structural deficit, if that rings a bell. And that, you know, has a lot, as we look at projections, like you said, Randy, we really want to take a look at our current levels of service. So for me, it always goes back to levels of service, but we look at our current levels of service and then we project those out and we compare them to the revenues coming in. And part of the, you know, that structural deficit discussion, there's a number of factors obviously that go into that. Growth for the city plays a big role in that. There was, I think for a while, we were looking at, you know, 2022 timeframe originally for maybe a slight dip, slight recession, if you will, and then things picking back up again. And so that growth plays a big factor in, you know, revenues coming in for the city, especially in support of the general fund. And thankfully, you know, there was a dip in the economy, certainly, you know, earlier this year, recovered quickly, and in Camas, at least, the housing market, which plays a big role in our, you know, revenue projections, has stayed very strong. So that's been good, but great comment on this, the structural deficit. And, you know, from a finance projection standpoint, it's certainly something that I'll chat with Kathy about and see if we can bring some additional information back. And then, like I mentioned at the October meeting, I think the levels of service are key, and that's something that we'll be working on here over the next year or so as well. And the Parks Commission will be heavily involved in that too, as we start looking a little bit closer at those levels of service as it relates to parks.
Any other comments from commission members or council members on that issue? I might just close my comment on this by asking Melissa and Shannon if, I guess the question is the council still concerned about that? And that's why I suggested if it is, maybe it's an appropriate update that could be given to the council at the workshop in January. But I also recall Monday night of this week when you were discussing the dollars necessary to purchase the Green Mountain property that was on your agenda. I think there was a comment that to make sure that those dollars do not come from the general fund. I think I'm hearing that if I correctly. And I don't know if it relates to the question that I just raised, but if it does, it might indicate that there is need for more discussion about both the acquisition of these parklands, but more particularly our ability to fully develop and maintain them. So I'll just leave that as a comment to follow up on it later date.
Randy, I believe the comment that you're talking about was concerning firefighters.
Right.
The purchase of the park of the Green Mountain land will come from REIT and REIT taxes and
Grants.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, there's grant money.
Yes.
as well. We're paying very
Yes.
little
Yeah,
for it. So that was a non-issue. Sorry, Shannon, go ahead.
that's okay. Melissa, did you have any comment concerning what Randy was talking about, since the initial issue was brought up 3 years ago before I was on board?
Sure, the MPD, because I was on that committee as well with Randy. And I don't think that is a topic for discussion for council at this moment, because we don't have a pool anymore. So not sure what the mayor's vision is going forward for a community center or something in that area, because that's basically what we were, working on the MPD, was for sustainability of a community center. And since that's not on anybody's radar right now, I don't know that it needs to be brought up. Would you agree, Shannon, or not? I mean, I'm okay either way. That's just my perspective of what I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, it certainly wouldn't hurt to talk about it amongst the 3 or 4 people that we can talk about it, and see if we want to bring it to the council again. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Shannon, Melissa, I'm kind of remembering back though that we were actually, Parks has been told for quite a few years we can't develop any additional parks because we don't have the funds in our maintenance and operations to take care of them moving forward. And so I think that was also a significant part of the MPD discussion, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is correct. And that is a big discussion that council needs to have as a whole. Is, like you said, we keep getting all this property and everything, but we have stopped funding for any new parks because we don't have maintenance resources to maintain them, because we can barely keep up on the ones we have. That's why we have all the adopted parks, so everyone can check on them and report any issues, any priorities that we aren't catching. So, council needs to have a really big discussion about it. So I'd be on board with that.
If I could just add to this, Melissa, I didn't recall when the presentation was made to council a few years ago that the community center was an issue there. My interpretation of the presentation had to do with simply being able to build out and maintain and operate parks. And I don't recall when I talked with the mayor and city administrator about the project that the community center was being driven at all, that issue was driving the MPD. It did surface very late in our committee process, as you remember, but then it just died, it went away. I think, and this is my own perspective, and I guess the reason I brought it up, for those that would remember the comments that we would have trouble building out and maintaining our parks, one might look at the acquisition of the Ettinger property, the Green Mountain properties, as the fact that the city is buying park land. Now, some of that will be retained as open space with very minimal improvements. But if there's confusion about it, I think it's important to make sure that we clarify what we can and cannot do. And I guess that's the reason I'm raising this, is the directive that we were given a few years ago doesn't appear to be as critical today as it was when the presentation was made to us. And I'm just trying to get a sense as we move forward.
That's true.
The MPD issue is referenced in the annual report that we would have presented to council earlier this year. And so it may result in some modifications or clarifications to the work plan that the commission has. And that's why I'm raising the questions now.
Sure. And maybe that would get that adjusted and maybe get it on for presentation at the planning retreat, council's planning retreat. It'd be a good topic.
Melissa?
For discussion.
I would agree if the council can do that. If not, I would like
If we can,
to have
yeah.
it come back on our agenda before the commission, and we'll do our best to work it a little bit more here.
Sure.
I think that given that we are purchasing the Green Mountain property, now would be the perfect time to broach the question again with council. How are we going to maintain all of this green space with no additional people? So I think it's a question that, or a seed that needs to be planted again, maybe the next council meeting or the one after.
Sure.
Melissa, what do you think?
The next one, we need to just start bringing it up. And one caveat to the Green Mountain is that they have donated a 10-acre park, a park that I can't remember the size, but they will take care of it for 10 years. And that's just one little aspect of all the property, you know, but
Right.
there is a park to be maintained for 10 years by the developers.
Okay.
But yeah, we still have a lot of work to do. And even some open spaces need some maintenance at times, you know, for the trails and things like that, as we were talking about on the budget line earlier about trail space and having
Okay.
enough money in the budget for it as well.
So
Because who knows?
maybe you and I can talk about it offline, and then we can
Sure.
decide what to do during the next council meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'll make a note of that.
Great. Thank you, Shannon, Melissa. Appreciate the dialogue, and we'll look forward to seeing where this goes in the next few weeks. And I'm ready to ask Steve to proceed with the capital projects, if everyone's okay with that. Will still be an opportunity to ask questions. So Steve, go ahead.
You bet. Thanks, Randy. And real quick, just a couple of notes on your last few minutes worth of discussion there. We are adding, you know, we've had the opportunity to add more maintenance staff over the last couple of years. And so that speaks to the conversation that you're having regarding maintenance and levels of service. I would say that, you know, the people we've been able to add and the ones that the new person that we'll be adding next year, you know, still don't get to the level necessarily that I think the community would generally desire. So that big picture discussion is still a good one to have. So this one, hopefully everybody can see it. I just brought up the capital project list, and this is the full list. I'm going to scroll to the top. We'll just briefly go through these. The items in blue are the new items. Anything in white text or black text, I guess, on white screen, those are just the carryovers, or essentially projects that you should have seen in the past, and we can briefly touch on those.
Steve, can I just interrupt a minute?
Yep.
I'm still seeing your original line item budget for salaries, administration, and so forth.
Thank you. I'm gonna try it again here and reset maybe. How's that?
There we go.
Okay, thank you. So, so again, blue are the new items, essentially, is what it comes down to. So we can quickly roll through these, but I'm going to start at the top. It's not necessarily under the parks category, but the major building maintenance does include a carryover item, which is the community center renovation, if you will, that I think Parks Commission has had a lot of discussion on in the past. That's something that's included in that 2021 proposed budget under major building maintenance, but I think it's fair to say there's probably some additional discussions that need to happen there before we fully move forward on that project, but the money is in there in that line item. And then I can skip down. Most of these should look familiar to the commission members here. The open space trails and park upgrades is really a placeholder that we use for opportunity purposes and grant purposes. So that's a number that's pretty consistent, or has been in past years. The Wildlife League boat launch in 2021, that is preparation for Recreation Conservation Office grant opportunities that'll come up in 2022. And I think it's fair to say, you know, we'll want to do a brief review of what we want to do with the boat launch in that area, and that'll be a topic of discussion as we go through that project and prepare that. But that money is really just for planning purposes. It's not for actual design. It's just to go through a preliminary design effort, kind of set ourselves up for a grant opportunity. The East Lake Trail and line 16 there, that one is starting at the Oak and Acorn, or Acorn and Oak. I always get that backwards, and one of those should be correct. But a trail there that's been permitted along the lake going to the north. That one, all the permits are in hand, and so this would support construction of that trail. Parklands to Heritage Trail, the T1. That one is discussions on a trail connection from Camas Meadows Drive through essentially the Parklands development, if you will, and then down to the Heritage Trail. And so there's some work to be done there yet. There's been some discussions with property owners there, and obviously trying to get through the golf course as well. And so there's some additional work and coordination that needs to happen on that before we can actually move forward. But some of that Jerry was getting in place as he was leaving, and we need to pick that back up and keep rolling with it. Crown Park restrooms.
Steve, sorry to interrupt. So the funds that are budgeted for 2021 for the Parklands to the Heritage Trail, that's not for construction. It's more for design, or are we to the point of acquiring right away, or what?
Yeah, it's more on the design, permitting, coordination side of things. Well, again, we'll have to pick those conversations back up, but the original intent was the city was not necessarily going to be doing construction on that, but we would be working with the landowner who was going to do a lot of the actual construction activity.
Got it. Okay. And then the funds in 2022, it looks like there's a lot larger number there. What is that?
Yeah, that's to support those construction efforts essentially in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, and feel free to interrupt me, and obviously we can pause and come back to these as well after we run through them. Crown Park restrooms and sport court. That one, you'll see that number in 2022. There's been some, I think it was actually, both of those items were actually in the budget last year. We actually went out to bid on the sport court. It came back quite a bit higher than what we would have anticipated, and so we held off on it. I think at this point it's fair to say that, with Crown Park as a whole and the master plan at Crown Park, that number is in 2022 to give us time to have further discussions on how we want to approach Crown Park and the master plan and all the improvements as a whole. And then skate park improvements, 75,000 in 2022. That's to it's in coordination with City of Washougal. And then we have been working on some grant opportunities as well through the Parks Foundation on that. And so we'll have some additional coordination efforts over the next year to try and pull that together, including working with Washougal and making sure that they have money in their budget as well.
Steve, just a question, and Cassie may have a response to this. Regarding skate park, I think I heard you say this is not a done deal yet. There is still funding or grants that are going to be required. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, that's my understanding. And I haven't been involved in all of the discussions over the last few years, actually, but the intent is that we are still searching for some grants to support that effort. I'm not sure that we'll come out with significant amounts of money through grant opportunities to support that, but it is something that we've been trying to coordinate with Parks Foundation and others on, is to contribute towards that effort.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I really think that young people need a place to go and something to do, especially in these times. And I don't know how much money do we need to upgrade or build a skate park? What's the dollar amount?
Well, I think the current thoughts or up to this point have been, I think it was 75,000 from Washougal, 75,000 from Camas, and then some additional grant funds in there. So, you know, we're in the obviously $150,000 to $200,000 range. And there were some plans, I believe, originally from an architect that was helping out up front that were driving those estimates.
So that's not really a whole lot of money. Not saying I have that much in my bank account. I'm just saying that as compared to other things like Green Mountain, that's not a whole lot of money, but it surely would bring a whole lot of satisfaction to some teens in the area. How long has this been languishing?
It's been, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years, maybe, if not longer, when was it Tim Laidlaw, I believe, who was working on that effort, and I haven't heard from him lately, but I know that's been at least a couple of years.
Well, I just think it's a worthwhile project. Short of building a teen center or something like that, this is pretty good ROI on the investment. But that's just my thought. So I just see them out skateboarding on the streets and think, you know, we should have a place for them to go, and can have a camera there or whatever we need to do to keep it from being turned into a drug habitat. But I really think it would be a good thing to do.
It is a good thing to do. And I think Tim is just sitting back, waiting to see if anything's going to happen.
And I can chime in that we at Partners do hear from Tim Laidlaw still. So, and we are holding some money that was raised at the fundraiser that was held at Grains of Wrath, as well as some grant money. Partners has applied for a couple of small grants. We did receive one for the skate park last year. We returned it because they had higher priority COVID related needs. But we are applying for it again this year. And I believe that Parks Foundation of Clark County has also made skate park one of its primary fundraising efforts. So as far as Partners, and I would love Katie to chime in if she has a second too, but we would be fully in support if at all possible of getting work going on the skate park sooner rather than later. I agree with you, Shannon, that there is a real need there, and the community showed up big to our park meeting a couple years ago. They came in full force. There's a lot of people who would really like to see this happen, and we just haven't made any progress on it. So Katie, did you have any other Partners or skate park thought on it?
I just think that it's a really valuable thing for our community. And yes, hopefully it reaches the teens, but it might reach, a larger age range of our population. So I would really hope that we can figure out a way to get that going for them, because they've been waiting for a while.
They have.
I can tell you that in the last 3 weeks, I've been contacted, I think by 2 or 3 separate, they're all 14-year-olds, and I didn't ever hear if they were all friends or not, but they were not part of the effort over the last couple of years. So they're new comments, if you will, that we're receiving from the teens right now that are really looking for additional equipment as well. So your comments fit right in with what we're hearing.
So Steve, is the delay to coordinate with Washougal, is that the primary reason?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Is some of the last conversations is that Washougal was also targeting the 2022 timeframe, and I have not followed up with them here directly. So I'll do that actually in the next few days and see if I can give an update out to the Parks Commission after that.
Do we have the money though available, even though I know it's in the 2022 column now, but I thought we had it kind of in the 2020 column, earlier. If something were to be able to happen to allow that to bump up a little bit, would we have that capacity?
So that would be something where we would look at these and figure out if there's opportunities to switch some of these projects around. Maybe there was something that we were looking at in 2021 that we slide to 2022, and that might open up an opportunity and to move the skate park forward. I think, and there might be opportunities to make some improvements or some progress, I should say, maybe on the design side, and just ramp things up so that we're ready, early in 2022. That could be the other thing, because there will be some planning effort that's involved to even get it off the ground once we have all the funds together.
Okay.
One last comment for me anyway. The engineering aspect, are we using a person that is a skateboarder, or are we using some teams that could help give some input into the design? I think that would be the best way to go, and instead of making it like what we think it should be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Definitely.
there's probably others on this call that can talk to it better than I can, but my understanding was the architect, if you will, that we used before was actually somebody who had a lot of experience in skate park design and that realm of the world, because it is kind of a unique design, that's for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you.
There's a guy on that committee that was working with Tim Laidlaw, who builds designs parks all over the world, like really, really incredible things. So I think they've got some really good input, Shannon.
Steve, let me, and commissioners, let me just throw something out based on your discussion here in the last few minutes. And I'm referring back to Crown Park. Steve is that was one of the projects that this commission worked on. And as I recall, one of the highest priorities at Crown Park was restrooms. And I heard you mention a moment ago that bids came in perhaps too high on the sports court. Is it possible to take funding from the sports court and move it down to the skate park? And I'll pose that as a question just for the heck of it, to see if there's a way of maybe increasing the funding in the shorter term for that.
Yeah, right now they're both identified in 2022, though. So when you look at it from that perspective, there's not much we can do to trade necessarily. But if we were looking for additional funds for skate park improvements in 2022, based on the adopted budget, that could be something that we could look at closer.
I'm just looking at, without trying to find new money, just reprioritize some of the things that we have in this budget. And of course, we don't know where Washougal is, but should a grant and Washougal all the stars line up and we're still short, I just throw that out as an option to consider. Maybe the sports court at Crown Park is not as high a priority as the skateboard park. There may be other projects as well, but that's just one that jumps out at me. Okay, Steve, go ahead and continue.
I'll try and keep working through these here. So the North Shore Conservation Legacy Lands money, that's $500,000. That's actually money that was included in a general obligation bond that the city has issued in the past. And that money is essentially to stabilize the Ledbetter and the Rose properties at this point. So we'll be moving hopefully fairly quickly on those as we get into 2021. The Curry Trail, that's a grant opportunity that I hope the Parks Commission is familiar with. That was an RCO grant we were working with Clark County on. Right now, that project is sitting on number 19 on the RCO funding list. Not at that level, I'm not holding my breath that project is going to receive funding. So we're tracking that one. We got to wait for the legislature to review the recommended funding list from RCO, and we'll see what happens. So that's money's there if we want to move forward. But the dollars shown include the grant, so I don't want to make it seem like those are additional city funds there. Those are grant funds essentially shown. The Grass Valley tennis courts resurfacing, we have money there and a need, but I think the main comment here is that we are trying to explore partnerships to maybe get that work completed without using city dollars. And so that's something that we're continuing to work on to see if there's partners in the greater Vancouver, Portland metro area that might want to help on that project. Northeast 3rd Avenue Trail Design. Parks Commission should be very familiar with this one. This was associated with the sewer pump station project on 3rd. Essentially, we have a kind of a concept preliminary design already completed that I believe we've shown the commission here more than once, but this money is to move that forward in design and permitting and get that ready for construction. And then construction likely wouldn't occur till the next biennium, which is why you don't see a larger dollar amount in 2022 there to support that project. Louis Block bleacher and ADA access improvements in 2022. If you're familiar with Louis Block and some of the bleachers and the pavement area around the concession stand and the restroom and the access in general coming into that park, that's money in 2022 to help support those improvements. And I think that also has come before you in the past, probably a couple of years ago, if I had to guess. And then 2 pieces of equipment, large mower. So we purchased a large mower last year, I believe. And when I say that, it's 11 or 12 foot wide, multiple decks, and it really is way more efficient than using some of the smaller mowers that we have, especially in the larger park areas like Heritage Park and the area across Lake Road from that. Way more efficient than using the smaller mowers. So the intent here is to buy another one that should increase our efficiency and essentially, replace a couple of the smaller mowers with this bigger one. And then the last item is a turf sweeper. Don't want to get that confused. I think there was a comment in the general budget with council in regards to, we don't have turf fields. What do we need a turf sweeper for? But this is for leaf pickup, grass pickup, some of that loose debris that that you find in parks and the cemetery, and this will help clean things up. Actually saves on wear and tear on the mowers too, because you're not trying to mulch through all that heavy stuff that's left on the ground. So that is a quick rundown of all of the projects. Are there any other questions on the budget side?
Okay. Thank you, Steve. We have some budget issues that we'll probably continue to talk about as we get into next year. But let's move to project updates. You talked briefly about Parks Director. We'll go to Parks Director position. Steve, you want to add anything to that?
I would just maybe open it back up to commission members to see if there were any other questions. Again, we are moving through the process with the hopes of having somebody on board, early next year. Okay.
Whoever it is, they're stepping into some big shoes.
Yeah, there's lots of activities going on as well, right? That more acquisitions, more property, lots of things a new person can jump into. That's for sure.
Steve, perhaps it's too late to bring this up, but it's worthy, I guess, of, I don't know what the selection interview process looks like, but it's an important, extremely important issue to Parks Commission. Any thought or discussion about having a member of the Parks Commission involved with part of that process?
Yeah, I think right now we're probably at a point where we're getting close to a final selection. So I think we might have missed that opportunity at this point. So that's, probably the best way to put that.
And with COVID restrictions, it's hard to coordinate. Sorry to interrupt, but you guys needed to fill the position quickly as best you could.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Next item is the resolution regarding the Clackamas Creek watershed. Steve, turn that back to you.
Yeah, so council adopted resolution 20-016. And hopefully you saw that come through. I know a couple of you at least are familiar with that, but we have been really trying to make efforts on, not just the algae blooms in Lacamas and Round and Funnel Lake lakes, but there's a broader water quality concern, if you will, in the entire watershed. And so council passed a resolution that identified 4 main points for us to focus on. One is, the big one is what you would imagine, which is that the lakes and the watershed as a whole are vital resources to the community and play an important role in not just recreation, but a lot of different functions throughout the city. The second item was they directed staff to develop a budget proposal. And that is something that right now is, we didn't cover it in the last item that we talked about regarding budget, but we have $150,000 proposed in the next biennium to make improvements in this regard. And so that, doesn't necessarily mean that, we'll clean the lake up in the next year or two. I think this is a, many years long project that's in front of the community as a whole. But the money in the budget is meant for us to really get our arms around the situation and try and make some headway on it. And so there's budget and money available to help do that. Likely it's going to be a lot of assessment and a lot of assistance from consultants as we try and wrap our arms around that. And that's, likely in the next couple of years, what you'll see the budget go towards is some of those assessment efforts. The third item was partnerships, which is key. We cannot do this alone, right? This is a substantial effort. One, we don't own everything. Even Lacamas Lake, we don't even own all the property surrounding the lake, but when you think about it, it's actually a waters of the state. So DNR, Department of Ecology, other state agencies play a role. So those partnerships are vital. Obviously, the county plays a really significant role when you think about the watershed as a whole, because everything, that flows into Lacamas Creek, that's generally north of the city, then flows into the city limits, if you will, and into Lacamas Lake and then Round Lake and down through the dams. And so the county plays a big part there. And then, the community and the federal government, ideally, as we get into this, hopefully will become a partner. And so those partnerships are key, and council wanted to recognize that. And then the fourth item that some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with and have heard about is creation of a committee. And so that is in the works right now. In fact, as part of the vacancy on boards and commissions, the Lacamas Creek committee was included in that advertisement, if you will. And so people in the community had an opportunity to submit their names to participate on this upcoming committee. And so that's in the works right now. Applications were due on December 4th, I believe last Friday. And so we'll be moving forward on the selection process and really trying to figure out what that committee is going to look like as we move forward. The resolution wasn't necessarily very specific in, number of people on the committee or what roles they'll play, but we know that we want to have that connection to the community. And one of the best ways to do that is through the committee framework, so they can help staff and council guide the process moving forward. So those were the 4 main points that came out of that resolution. In parallel with a lot of this work, we'll be looking to get a consultant team on board to help us and supplement city staff resources and really bring some of those expertise in that we don't have. The county will again play a big role as well. They do have folks in this field that can provide some assistance to us, and they'll be doing that. And then the other piece is looking at grant opportunities. We're a little bit late, but there's definitely some grants that are available for this type of work moving forward. Most of them through the state, some at a federal level as well. And so we'll be chasing those as we move forward. So any questions on that? Hopefully this group has heard a lot about this effort, but happy to answer any questions.
Well, let me just one comment. I did testify to the council a few months ago that this item was and is on our work plan and one of our goals for 2020. We know that there was some unusual problems with algae blooms in all of our lakes, and that prompted initially our concerns to put this on. I also forwarded a recommendation, I think to Steve Hogan, and I'll just repeat it here, that we have representation on that committee from the Parks Commission. And I guess I'll close with that, other than saying that if any of you are interested in an appointment to the steering committee, reflect that now, give your comments, because I'd like to see the Parks Commission have at least one, maybe two representatives, whatever it is. But it's an important issue to us and very important to the park and recreational programs that we oversee. So I'll just end with that comment.
I wouldn't mind hearing more about that process and what they're doing.
I would throw my hat in the ring too. I think of all the things on the Parks Commission that we could talk about, I mean, these three lakes sort of define our community, and they are the pillar of Camas. I mean, they really are, they make Camas really special. And I think that the shutdowns for the algae blooms have been a big issue. I've heard a lot about it from a lot of community members. And I really think that, those fall within our community, and the city of Camas needs to lead out. I know there's a lot of other state and other entities that are involved in making this happen, but I think we need to drive it, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So this is one thing where, gas pedal down, I guess is my way of describing what I think that we as members of the community and members of the Parks Commission should be thinking about in terms of resolving these concerns with the lake water quality.
I'd like to express some interest as well. I do realize I'm the shortest tenured commissioner here in the group, so it looks like there's a lot of other interest as well. So I definitely would defer to some folks who have been involved in the commission a little bit longer if there's interest there, but definitely would like to throw my name in the hat as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will offer up that regardless of who's on the committee, we'll definitely foresee coming to the Parks Commission with regular updates on this topic as we get rolling on it. Obviously, we'll be providing regular updates to council as well, but this is a high priority topic for council, without a doubt. We've heard that already. And I think from the community perspective as a whole, the outreach and the education and the communication on this one needs to be at a very high level. And that's, as far as a lot of it and often. And so we'll make sure to have the resources to help us do that.
All right. Well, Steve, and to our counselors, you see the interest here by the commission. We have 3 individuals that have expressed an interest in it. So I hope that gets recognized as we move ahead. So it sounds like, Steve, the appointments to these various committees, is that going to happen before the end of the year, or do you think it'll go into January, or what do we know about the timing of that?
Yeah, Jamal is on as well. I believe typically it's been the first or second meetings in January where that happens. And so that would be my anticipation, is that it's right after the first of the year typically.
And I'll jump in here. The mayor and I are reviewing boards and commissions, and it may happen on the 21st, or it may happen sometime in January. We haven't nailed down which meeting it's going to be, but it's in the process.
All right. Thank you. All right. If we're ready to move on, Edinger property acquisition. This happened, a month ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. I had communicated with Steve and copied Melissa and Shannon on it. I just had raised a question about the role of the Parks Commission when there is acquisitions of this type for park and open space. Steve, why don't you give a quick review of what actually happened, and then I'll come back in on a couple comments that I have.
Yeah, real briefly. So this is the property at 408 Northwest Lake Road. So it's across from Heritage Park. There's 2 homes. Well, this is the closest home to Lacamas Lane, I guess, if you will. So the one farthest north. So the city acquired that property. Council approved a $175,000 purchase. At their second meeting in November, I believe. So the purpose of the property acquisition was just in support of the Parks and Open Space Plan. So there is not any identified purpose yet for that property. So it does fit nicely though with the other open space that we own in the area. So if you looked at a property map, I think the city generally owns Heritage Park on the east side of the road, if you will, and the bulk of the property on the west side. So it does fit well within a open space criteria from that standpoint. So, if there's any use on the property, that would come out in the future. And I think the intent is to also move forward with, ultimately probably demolition of the home that's there. So.
When is closing and when can we bulldoze it?
Closing has already occurred. It was actually on November 18th. And there is a leaseback agreement in place with the person that was living there. And so she's currently, I think, looking for, another place to live. And then after that, of course, it's free to do what we will. So.
Before you bulldoze it, or maybe just afterwards, can I bring my metal detector? It's an old property. It's probably got some gems up there.
Good point. Other comments or questions? So let me share a little bit more about the conversation that Steve and I had a few weeks ago. I was unaware of this until the Friday before the council acted on it. And I basically was saying, well, can we bring this back to the Parks Commission? The only reason that came up is that there is a specific provision in the city code that defines our role and responsibilities. And it talks about identifying, proposing properties for acquisition for future park and open space. I understand the challenge that exists is that often negotiations on a property purchase is considered confidential. And to that end, the council will often go into executive session where staff presents the details of negotiations and price and so forth. That would make it awkward or difficult sometimes to put it in front of the Parks Commission in a public setting when there is negotiations going on. And I've kind of wrestled this around in my head, trying to figure out what's the intent here. And I guess I would look at the Green Mountain acquisition that just occurred Monday night. There's little question for those of us that have been on the commission for a few years that Green Mountain and what's happening out there, we've been very involved with. The planning for that has been in front of the commission. We have the Legacy Lands planning process that is still ongoing, and there will be comp plan and zoning changes still required on properties like that. So I guess what I'm thinking about here is that I understand the difficulty sometimes of including the Parks Commission up front when there is confidential negotiations. It would be helpful at least for staff to inform, maybe it's the chair or the subcommittee, that at least lets us know that these are underway and helping at least to define a future role for the Parks Commission. In other words, take the property, what is the best and future use of the property? Where do the trails go? What kind of designation would we put on it? Is there a neighborhood park opportunity or is it just open space? And I think those discussions can occur after initial purchase, but I just want to make sure that the city recognizes our role in the process, and then we make sure we have some way of protecting that. So those are my comments. Okay. Steve, the pros plan update. We potentially have a real busy year in 2021, COVID notwithstanding that how that'll impact it. And I know there is a RFP or RFQ out right now to select consultant for that project. Can you tell us a little bit more about where we're going and what's going to happen there?
Yeah, you nailed it. Essentially, the request for qualifications to get a consultant on board to complete the pros plan update is on the street. Right now, the deadline for submittals is December 18th, so next Friday. The intent is to get the plan completed next year, essentially, and then that would set us up for making sure that we don't miss any opportunities for especially the Recreation Conservation Office grants. They have requirements that you update your plans every 6 years, and it has to be done prior to the grant application timeframes opening up. So, or before you submit your grants, I should say. So that's really our goal in this one, is to take next year, make sure that plan is completed so that as we roll into 2022, we're able to, have that plan completed and adopted so that we're able to submit on some of the potential grant opportunities that are out there. And I would say, I think Randy and I talked a little bit about the public participation side of things. So this group will definitely be busy with the plan update. We do want to have still a robust public participation as we update the plan. And obviously with COVID, that's a little bit tougher, but I have been hearing good things. We have a couple of other examples of plans that the city's been working through where we've gotten public input. But I've also heard that from others that, especially on the park side, it seems that responses to surveys, some of the Zoom open houses that folks have been having, that there's been pretty good success with those. So one of the things we asked in the request for qualifications was for all of the proposers to tell us in their proposal that they give us that, tell us some ideas, right? How are we going to do this understanding that we're likely to be in COVID, kind of framework for at least the foreseeable future. And so how do we get that public input under that situation? So we'll see what kind of unique ideas they come back with.
Okay, any questions for Steve? I presume, although this is a unique process, Steve, as you have just explained, there is usually a advisory committee that is made up, a steering committee, and in the past, we've had a couple members from Parks Commission serving on that. And I presume that, subject to trying to figure out what the consultants recommend, that basic process of, again, having Parks Commission involved in the committee process would be recognized as well.
Yeah, you bet. There's opportunities for lots of involvement on the plan updates, that's for sure.
Okay. Seeing no further questions. Any miscellaneous updates? I think you have one more report, Steve, that very interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple. So I'll start with Green Mountain, the Green Mountain acquisition that you mentioned earlier. Hopefully everybody had a chance to see the council packet information that we had forwarded. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the meeting on Monday night or not, but I can bring the presentation up, or I think might be better served just opening it up to see if there's questions on that acquisition or any questions on the details, and I'm happy to provide additional information.
Unless there are any questions, I think it has happened. There is Steve, there's an acquisition. There's part of the acquisition that is not implemented for almost a full year. Could you just quickly explain? There's two parcels or two pieces of property. Can you just quickly delineate the difference there?
Yes, in fact, let me just do a quick screen share because I do have it up, hopefully here ready. So this might be the best view. Can everybody see my screen? I hope. So yeah, 2 parcels. It's really just in summary, there's really 4 parcels that are in question here when you think about legal lots or legal parcels from a strict definition. But in the purchase and sale agreement, we really identified them as parcel 1 and parcel 2 just for ease of reference. The donation piece will occur prior to the end of the year. It'll close this year, and that's the parcel 1. And so that's 60 acres on the kind of the lower piece of Green Mountain, if you will, closer to Ingle Road. And then parcel 2, which is actually the top of Green Mountain itself, that's a 55-acre purchase. That was the negotiated price at $3.8 million. And that closing date does not occur until October 31st of, at the latest, of 2021. So that's out, 11 months or so from now before that actually closes.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Hey, Steve, are there some hurdles that need to be hit before that closing, or what's driving the delay?
Part of it was, a lot of it was actually the funding piece. And so we'll be having further discussions on the $3.8 million purchase price and how we pay for that as a city. Kathy's identified, at least 4 options. There's probably other options that are out there. It's going to be worth having some discussion on grant opportunities and maybe how we use these parcels in the future. Some of the grants, as you all know, can place restrictions on what you can and can't do. And so that date of October 2021 gives us time to work through those. We know that it's a great buy, if you will, and that we have the capacity to be able to do it without, impacting the city as a whole. It's just, we want to be strategic in how we put that package together, and the October timeframe gives us a few months to do that.
Got it. Thank you.
Steve, I just wanted to say this is a phenomenal acquisition for the city, for parks. The trails potentials in this are phenomenal, and maybe view opportunities at the top of the mountain. It's going to be amazing. So kudos to the city. I know it was really rushed. I heard that there was a big rush to get it done by the end of the year. So so thank you for doing that, because this is a big deal for our green space network. So yay.
Yeah, I'll second that. Super excited about that.
So Cassie, you and I may need to put our boots on and do our subcommittee work out there.
I'm in. I can't wait.
I've been all around it, but I've never been on it. So.
And literally, as you might have saw that I logged into the meeting, but I didn't have my video on there for the first few minutes. I was sending an email to the Recreation and Conservation Office, actually, for the what's called the waiver of retroactivity, which some of you may be familiar with. That we don't have to use it, but it essentially gives us 2 cycles worth of grant opportunities to use the properties as match towards either improvements or purchase price. There's 8 or 9 different programs through RCO that we'll be taking a look at for this property, but at least we will have the opportunity, hopefully, to use that for future grant options through RCO. And there are others. Conservation Futures is one that we'll continue to look at and work with the county on. And then there's other potential opportunities out there too. So.
And can we just add to, this is really cool property in that it's connected to a bunch of other public properties, right? Could you, I know there was a slide that showed all the adjacent public properties, but it just ties into the open space network to make for large acreage. So that's another huge benefit.
Yeah, and it sounds like on this slide, the DNR property, Department of Natural Resources, on the far left side of the screen that says it's an RCO grant app, that I believe is moving through as well. So DNR is going to, really provide a big chunk of land on the, I don't know, the west or south side of Ingle, if you will. And yeah, when you tie all those together, it's that's a great area out there. There's going to be lots of opportunities to get some trails and connections made out there, and park opportunities.
Okay, Steve, next item.
I am gonna see if Dennis actually has any miscellaneous updates on his end from an operations standpoint. Other than that, I can be done.
Good evening, guys, everybody. Just a quick couple little things. Steve mentioned the Louis Block project for bleachers and ADA access improvements. In the coming months, we have been speaking with the Babe Ruth organization, and we'll be removing the southern eastern side of the bleachers until that project can take place. We have some braking supports. I believe they were probably made from the mill scrap years ago. They're not compliant, so that side's going to be removed. We'll do some pavement improvements just to make it accessible and not trip hazards. Speaking with the league, we'll place some, if they do have a season next spring, we'll place some picnic tables, and then users can watch games from lawn chairs. So until the project can take place, that's the short-term solution. So next thing I had was speaking with the Babe Ruth organization. We're having access issues with COVID. Same goes for Little League. Users haven't been using the facilities. They haven't been maintaining the facilities on their responsibility according to our user agreements. So going forward, we're going to clean up the access and limit the amount of folks that have access to our parks, just to make sure that we're getting them taken care of and keeping things cleaned up as they're intended. And going forward, we're looking to strengthen those user agreements. So really the last thing I have is I heard some comments earlier in the week about Grass Valley Park play equipment. Those have been ordered, and actually were ordered several months ago. Today we took the delivery of the brand new corkscrew slide. So that will all be installed here in the coming weeks. So that is about everything I had.
All right. Steve, I thought there was one more item you wanted to cover. Didn't you have a report about the changes in trails and park acquisition in the last couple decades?
I think that was that shared with Steve Lawrence, right?
I thought, Lorenz, is that your report?
Yeah, that was me.
I'm
You
sorry.
want me to do that now or later?
I thought it's interesting. I thought that actually was supposed to be from the other Steve when I saw that. It just, anyway. Why don't we just, we're going to move into commission reports unless there's anything else on the miscellaneous side. So why don't we start with Steve Lorenz? And Steve, what do you have to report?
Well, I don't know if Susan can put up that document, or do you guys have it in front of you? The little backstory on that document. 11 months ago, I actually had that in my hand 10 months ago, just before COVID hit. You guys remember back, we had a little dissension in the ranks, I felt, and that that things needed to be fixed. And as a 20-year member of the board, I thought, if it works, don't fix it. So I asked Jerry, I said, hey, Jerry, what's happened over the last 30 years? Do we need to change how we're doing business? So again, I was a little frustrated. I don't want to go back and be negative, but I was a little frustrated, and I just wanted to see what had been done and what had been done under Jerry's tutelage. Again, this document was 10 years old, or 10 months old, excuse me. So if you don't have it in front of you, again, when Jerry was here around 30 years, 28 years, and we had 26 acres of parks when he started, and we have 379 now. And of course, thanks Steve Wall, we actually have a lot in just the last few weeks, those numbers have jumped up. So again, what I wanted to share back in March with the rest of the commission is that the mayor had kind of tasked us with having fun as board members. And I felt like we always had fun, and it was fun to be a part of parks. And we had this great staff, and we had this great director, and I really enjoyed being a part of the whole thing. So I knew that the numbers would back us up. And so again, Jerry's not with us, he retired, but I think this is a shout out to Jerry, and we can all be thankful. Like David said, pretty big shoes to fill, going from 26 acres to 379 open space. Anyway, if you jump down, we started off 30 years ago with 355 acres, and now we have, with our additional we're at 2,700 some acres of parks and open spaces, and I think that's pretty impressive. And it speaks to Susan, staff, Dennis, everybody involved, Lloyd Halverson, and specifically to Jerry. Sorry. So if anybody wants to comment, I think it's a pretty remarkable document.
Well, Steve, thank you for putting that together. That is a remarkable change over the last 30 years. Anybody else have comments?
I just think it's impressive, and it's absolutely a shout out to the priority that the city of Camas makes to open space and to green space and to the the environment and to the beauty of the area. So love it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for doing that. I love this. I've said this before, but I was at a council meeting years ago, and somebody said, I can't remember who to give credit to, but somebody said people move to Camas for the schools, and then they stay here for the trails and the open spaces. And I think that there's a ton of truth to that. But I think exactly what you're highlighting here is a whole bunch of what makes this so livable, so beyond livable, just such a great place to be. So, yep, I agree with everything you said.
Thanks, Cassie.
Exactly. And for Lloyd's vision and Jerry's vision and all the footwork and the historical knowledge Jerry had, he did a tremendous amount of work, and they laid a good foundation for us.
Of course, Jerry would want absolutely no credit for any of this.
Oh, absolutely.
He bailed on us before we could, raise him up. He's home. He's like, oh, I don't even need. But his legacy.
Yeah, he just rode off
secure.
into the sunset. Yep.
That vision and that determination was great. So
I'd like to make a suggestion with this report. Next month, as we're reviewing our annual report, I think this should be an attachment to the annual report that we update and we'll send to council. So just
perfect.
File that away. Other comments? If not, if we can return to the regular screen. Let's see. Jason, any reports? Anything you need, questions you have?
No, a few things. I did get a chance to, my son and I went out to the 3 parks that I've, I guess, maybe unofficially been assigned to, Louis Block, Prune Hill Sports Park, and Forest Home. We're able to get out there last weekend. And, I think Dennis had just noted maybe a couple things at Louis Block, but I thought things looked great, super clean. Kudos to Dennis and his team and the operation and maintenance staff. Super impressed by how all 3 of those parks look. And very impressed by the baseball facilities that are available to children in Camas. I mean, I'm a baseball guy. I wish I would have had that kind of opportunity with those nice fields, especially those artificial turf fields were great. And got some photos, hoping to try to kind of track things over time or create a little bit of a photo folder so I can kind of look back and see how things have progressed over time. Did get a chance to attend the Lacamas Watershed Council Steering Committee meeting last week. I had just got onto their website to try to get more information, and they have an online form you can fill out to show interest. And Judith had reached out to me and invited me to the steering committee meeting, so I just attended just to kind of listen in. And That was interesting to hear. Also called into the Clark County Park Advisory Board meeting last night. Nothing too big to report there. And yeah, over the weekend took about a 3.5 mile hike around Fallen Leaf Lake, circled back around on the new roundabout, and the connectivity that provided to get from Fallen Leaf back around the roundabout to Heritage and back up to my house was amazing. That connectivity was awesome, and really just reminded me of the awesome open space and trail opportunities that we have here in Camas. So we're very fortunate. So that's about all I have to report. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Cassie.
So a real quick partners update. One kind of cool thing that came through one of my best Ivy League volunteers, Jim. He comes to every single Ivy League event, I think. He was looking for more things to do. He kind of worked it through Ivy League, and he removed all the plastic tubes off the seedlings that were started over by the Washougal River Greenway. Unfortunately, some of the trees were already damaged, but I think he removed over 1,000 of those plastic tubes and left a huge pile for Nick to pick up. So we do have volunteers still looking to do things in a COVID safe way. Also, let's see. Oh, I already mentioned that partners are applying through the community chest, another round of community chest grants for a skate, specifically for the skate park. And then another fun thing we're doing, just because we haven't been able to do much of our normal, like everybody else, but Krista Bashaw has been putting out bags for families and kids for Halloween, for Christmas, for I'm not sure what other events, and because she can't do her regular events. So she sat in on one of our meetings, and we are going to put out New Year's bags. Partners is going to fund this one. So we are funding, I think, for 500 kid bags full of New Year goodies, all the parent annoying things like the noisemakers and the glitter things and all of that, and some color pages and I don't know what all's in them, but little goodie bags for New Year's. And then those will be picked up by families at the library, like Krista's other programs. So that's how we'll wrap up the year with hope for a brighter 2020. 21. So, and then really quick, I just want to, I wanted to say, Steve, on the Capitol presentation, I'm so happy to see that East Lake Trail is being done. I'm glad the permits are ready for that. That East Lake Trail is going to be, that's just going to be a great addition. I'm glad it's going to happen in the first year of the budget. I'm hoping if we can get word out about how, and that's a spectacular place. If any of you haven't been there, it's really pretty accessible already, even though the trail's not, you know, fully developed, but it is once you get back into the woods, and it's so much more beautiful than you would know. It's very fun to see the lake from the other side, and maybe it could alleviate some of the crowds that we have on the Heritage Trail, spread out people a little bit more, but I'm just really excited about that. Also, Dennis, is Dennis still on? I just wanted to say thank you. My parks, we had a broken slide at Benton Park, and the Benton Park slide is fixed. Also, whatever work the city did by the city steps, that's just amazing. I use those quite a lot just to walk downtown, and I see a lot of people there, and that improvement to help with the water problems there is really, really good. So thank you for doing that. And then one thing I wanted to talk about, Jason, you kind of brought it up again. Last time we talked about some kind of COVID priorities and what citizens need in terms of walking, recreation, trails, whatever, to kind of get outside when you can't do some of your other things. And I was thinking that people do want to volunteer. We do have a lot of people in Camas, I think, that really do want to chip in. So this is just a thought about going back to ask again. Parks has asked in the past about a volunteer coordinator position. I'm wondering if a lot of the work that needs to be done to clear sidewalks or you know, things that staff doesn't always get to that would help with pedestrian access could be done by even COVID safe volunteer groups, like you just work with the members of your family, or which is how I'm thinking about trying to start up Ivy League again so that we don't lose another year of work. Maybe just do COVID safe, you know, with your own family members or something. But I didn't know, is there any capacity, because we don't have recreation programs going on right now, is there any capacity within our own staff to maybe do a trial of a volunteer coordinator, or some way to kind of maybe get that ball rolling? I just wanted to throw that out there as a thought to get more people involved.
Yeah, I'll just pipe in real quick. So great thought, Cassie. It's something that I've actually been mulling over as well. Might have the opportunity to do that. I think we'll have to get through kind of the end of the year and then see how things progress as we move into January and February. I mean, it looks right now like we're still kind of on a pause until January 4th, I believe. And then it really depends on if and how things open up from there and what capacity existing staff will have. But right there along the same lines of thought as you are. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then really quick, I will just close with, for those of you who've been on the board for a long time, I've talked to Eunice multiple times over COVID, and Eunice is doing awesome. She's really happy with her little dog. And so Eunice is doing great. I also texted Jerry not too long ago with a text, just how's retirement? And I got back, better than I even hoped. So our parks people are doing well, even the ones we don't get to see anymore. So it's good to see all you guys. I do miss these parks meetings. So good to see you guys, even if it's just in a little box. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Cassie. Katie.
All right, there we go. We've been out and about walking quite a lot. So I get to go through the Cooper's View Park pretty frequently. It's definitely getting a lot of use. I see people, every time I go there, I see kids, lots of people there. So it's definitely, as a neighborhood park, it's definitely getting its use. It looks like it could use some love and attention. Some of the landscaping, it's starting to look a little overgrown, but there was some work done there earlier, a big spot that was cleaned out. That looks great. I can just see where the little footprints have run through the vegetation, and there's now some bare spots where it's really gotten used, but it's being enjoyed. Also up by Dorothy Fox, cruise by there really quite frequently. And again, it's, there's always people there every time I go by. And so I think that it's, it's getting used as an outdoor space during this time. Looking at these parks and, being out and about more, spending more time outside looking for outdoor recreation kind of things. It's really gotten me thinking, just kind of about our area lately, and even as we've explored more in our community. But I'm curious if the city or Parks and Rec has any sort of data or observations about how park and open space usage has changed over just like the last 9-10 months. I mean, like, is staff seeing more usage in certain areas? Like many people are going outside to do more things. So how are the changes in our community behavior, I guess, affecting parks and space usage? And what does that look like for us going forward, those changes in people's behavior?
Well, Steve.
I didn't know if you wanted me to respond or not. I can certainly, no statistical data, right? I'm confident in saying that, but just from what we've noticed, it does seem like there's an uptick definitely in use. And it kind of, just like everything else with COVID, right? It kind of, the first couple of months seemed like there was people out everywhere, right? I don't know if you remember, right? But the March, April, May timeframe, it seemed like there was people walking on every sidewalk and every street, in every neighborhood, and every park was being heavily used. We felt that from an operations and maintenance standpoint. And then it kind of tapered off. And then it seems to be picking back up again. And I think a lot of that, some of it might have to do with the school factor as well. I'm sure a lot of it, obviously, but this fall, even I think Grass Valley is an example. We were just talking earlier this week. It's almost I don't want to call it a daycare, but it's essentially a group of families, it appears, that are dropping their kids off or bringing their kids to Grass Valley at almost scheduled times, every day during the week. And so that type of use we're seeing in the in the restrooms get more heavily used. The parks themselves are getting more heavily used. So just that reaction is that things have definitely seen an uptick as far as use on trails and parks.
All right, thanks, Steve. Anything else, Katie? David.
Okay, my two parks are the Grass Valley Park and the Green Mountain Park. Are we calling it that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we've settled on a name. There's no moniker or anything. Anyway, both of them I would rate in sort of good to excellent condition. Couple of minor maintenance items that I noticed when I was up there earlier today. Grass Valley Park, the chain link fencing around the tennis court is peeling pretty badly, so it needs a little TLC. And then at Green Mountain Park, there were a handful of trees that were looking a little sickly, and I didn't know if we still are under warranty with the developer. I know that they have a 12-month warranty situation on the landscaping or something like that. So not sure about that, but I also wondered whether or not there was a plan to put in some kind of signage or identifier so that it has a name. And then lastly, as you're driving into that Green Mountain community and you see the park, the first thing you see is the developer's sales signage. And one of the signs is totally blown over and kind of fallen apart. And so it looks kind of shabby, not reflective of the park's overall condition, but that piece just, leaves a poor first impression. And I'm sure it's probably just related to the recent wind or whatever. And then I do have one other thing, and that is I received some input from a member of the community with regard to the volleyball courts at Fallen Leaf Park. There's a volleyball court and the net's really sagging and the court's kind of has weeds all over it. I don't know how much use that actually gets, but this member of the community expressed interest in having multiple courts there so that tournaments could be had, which it really would kind of be a neat facility for that with the picnic tables and all that right there. Like, if there were multiple volleyball courts, they could certainly make that happen. Kind of like what is it? Over in Vancouver, they have 5 or 6 volleyball courts along Frenchman's Bar. I don't know if you've been over there, but they have tournaments there, things like that. So it's kind of a neat amenity. And let's see, I thought I had 1 or 2 other things. I think that may be it. Yeah, I think that's it. Just lastly, I think I would say I'd like to express appreciation to all of you. It's good to see you. It's been a long time, and we're doing a good work here. I really enjoy our parks. I frequently inspect all of the primitive trails in Fallen Leaf Lake area and also Lacamas Park on my mountain bike. And I ride through Grass Valley Park probably twice a week. So just love the area, love the things that we're working on. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Steve and Dennis, there was some things that David brought up, maybe that if you guys can look into at the parks that he mentioned, some maintenance issues and so forth, if you can just follow up and see if those are things that need to be addressed. Melissa.
Yes, sir. Well, it is nice to see everybody. It has been a long time. And I'd just like to thank everybody for your dedication and enthusiasm to this committee. It's always been a fun one to be on. And through the years, the complexities have gotten pretty diverse and good. We've had a lot of growth and a lot of opportunities. And I'd just like to thank everybody and wish everybody a merry and happy holidays. Was I muted the whole time?
No, we were hearing you.
Oh, okay. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank
I
you.
just saw a mute button there. All right, thank you.
Is Shannon, are you still on? Apparently not. So, all right. Just a couple of things from me, basically relating to the January agenda. There's some things I mentioned earlier, but let me just go over for staff that I'd like to see on there. We will finally redo the park assignments. We've actually made 1 year into 2, and I did some temporary appointments for Jason to get him involved. You heard him earlier. We will have the election of officers. I mentioned the annual report. I don't know if we'll wrap everything up, but we do need to kind of tweak that and get that report updated with a few things. And then keep in mind too, that we have put off for many months, we're supposed to get some training from Bernie about how we deal with the public and certain protocols and conduct that we have in our meetings. I am hoping that we will have the vacant Parks Commissioner position filled in January. Be nice if we had the director here as well. But tentatively assuming that at least we have a full commission, we may put that training session on with Bernie. So those are just upcoming agenda items. And with that, I just wanted to thank everybody for sticking with us for a very unusual year. We haven't met very often, and I think it's been frustrating. We have been such an active commission, and our plate has always been extremely full. And it's been a little frustrating. And even Zoom, even though I see all your faces out there and we get the chance to talk, there's something missing with Zoom. Probably you all feel it. But it is nice to have everybody together. I often comment that my goal is to try to keep the meeting under 2 hours, and I'm looking at the clock, and I think I did that. If we extend any longer than from this point, it will be because you have a comment or something that you want to add. So before I adjourn the meeting, is there anything else anybody'd like to bring up? All right. Well, thank you all, and have a great Christmas holiday and Happy New Year. And let's hope that sometime into early 2021, we're all back at a table playing, face-to-face, having real meetings again with the public. So have a great holiday season. We'll see you next year.
Good to see
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Everybody take care. Stay
Bye.
well.